Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of RK Leadership. My name is Rob Cameronpour, and my guest today is Kevin Raymond. I will let Kevin introduce himself and talk to us about his journey of leadership. Kevin is a leadership coach and trainer, and we're gonna talk to him about his knowledge and experience. And this is our purpose in order to help create tomorrow's leaders is to share our knowledge and experience with them. So without any further ado, Kevin, good morning and thank you very much for accepting my invitation. And please go ahead and introduce yourself and talk to us about your journey, your leadership
Okay,
journey.
well, cool. Thanks very much for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to speak with other leaders in the industry and get everybody's perspective and such. So I guess if you're looking at how I started my journey, it was really just something that I fell into because of a set of circumstances that occurred that kind of led me to the path of coaching. And essentially, what happened, I was working in the government for quite some time, and I was a policy advisor for cabinet ministers, which was a really good, exciting, fulfilling job. And it was an excellent experience. Loved going through it. Then decided I was going to adopt some children, and I took some time off to do that. And then that kind of went into something that it needed a little bit more of my time and involvement. So after a couple of years of being on a leave, I decided that I really wasn't going to go back and try and manage both of those situations. So I spent the time at home and with my kids and such, doing the best we could with that, and just sort of thought I'll figure it out along the way. And then I fell into kind of a renovation construction type business because just hanging out with the parents and being like a super parent and going to all these meetings and hearing about what people were struggling with. And I'm pretty handy, so I decided to just give me something to do. I'd start working for these people and help them with a bathroom renovation or a kitchen renovation. And then that escalated into quite a business. Actually, it took off, and it was pretty exciting, and it was a good time for me to venture into that, because the kids were much more stable and in school and doing their thing. But then a few years into that, I struggled with some health issues, and then ultimately during COVID, I had a heart attack, and then I had to have some open heart surgery and stuff, which equates to a relatively long recovery period, right? Which I did. But I took that time to actually pick up a lot of things that I had not finished when I was, working in the government. I had started a number of certificate programs, a number of different courses, and then just because of work volume and everything else and travel, you never got a chance to finish these things. So I thought this is a really good time for me to do that because there's absolutely nothing else to do. And I took the time to finish those certificates, and I had a couple of leadership certificates at Cornell, and then I fell upon a colleague who had just finished a program in neurolinguistic programming, and I thought, well, I didn't even know what that was actually at the time, and so I questioned him about that, and it sounded pretty interesting, and I thought that's kind of a cool thing, and since I'm not doing anything else. And it didn't really matter if you wanted to do something else, because at that time, as everything was shut down. So all of these remote things were happening, and it just exploded, as you know. So I thought I'm gonna check it out, and he referred me to the person that was responsible for him getting a certification, and it was a person located in Australia, or a group, and I signed up for that while recovering, and it was a really amazing program. It was really, the whole concept of neurolinguistic programming is really interesting, and not, it's not really invasive, but it's such a helpful tool to help people get past difficulties that they're facing, or things that they've been hanging on to that stop them from achieving the goals that they want to achieve. So I took that, and it's a two-part program. So you get your certification, but then you can get your master's in it, which I also did. And then ultimately that led me to Yeah, it was great. Like I loved it. And it was just such, and the instructor was really incredible too. So I really enjoyed working with him. Um, but it kind of ultimately led to learning more about coaching, understanding more about coaching and what coaching was all about. And then I thought, this is something I'm going to look into, and I started investigating that. And I took a number of programs for coaching and how to start a coaching business and things. Um, and then ultimately, when I started, I was like a life coach, which is a pretty common thing for people when they're getting into coaching and they're not really familiar with all the nuances of it. And life coaching seems to be that well-rounded, easy, sort of, okay, I can do that kind of thing. But I think with most people that do that, you quickly find out where your actual niche lies and what you enjoy more, right?
That's
Because
right.
when you go into life coaching, you do get all of those different venues from people. Like you get business people who want to try and do better in their business. You get people who are having difficulty with a life work balance, things like that. And you actually discover through the few clients that you pick up where your actual strengths are and where you are most comfortable expressing your knowledge and experience, right? And really that's when you discover that coaching is really based on your experience to help somebody else acquire or achieve the goals that they want to achieve, right? And that's how I
That's
ended up ultimately getting into business because that's my background. So it made sense, obviously, right?
awesome. Well, that's great. You talked about your health scare recently, and that's a part of that is resiliency is part of the growth and becoming not only a leader. It's very important in leadership, but also in strengthening your mindset. So I wanted to shift the question to how important is the mindset and how are you able to strengthen yours?
Your mindset is key to your success, like for everyone that and this is a struggle for so many people because I don't think a lot of people realize exactly how important your mindset actually is
That's
and how much that the effect of your self-talk affects the way your life is going to go, right? Because it's essentially in a real simple way, it's whatever comes out of your mouth or thought is what you are. So if you know, I've had a lot of friends like growing up and stuff that really were really always putting themselves down. I'd be like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you talking about yourself like that? You're amazing. Like, you do this amazing stuff. Like, you're so talented. Like one was a figure skater. Like, you can do all of these things. Like, why wouldn't you be excited about that and proud of that? It's excellent, right? Or, an artist. You have so much talent. Why aren't you showing people what you're capable of doing? And and your mindset is key to doing that. And most people base things on like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you're generally going to be stuck at some point in your life, just kind of muddling through and doing what you have to do. Like you're in a job, you do the same thing every day, and you're just going to keep plugging away because that's what you do. That's how you get your paycheck. That's how you feed your family, right? And you don't go, and then things that happen to you, like, oh my God, I just got more work piled on me. Now I have to stay late, like, no, right? So it's like, if you have a growth mindset, it's like, oh, okay, wow, look, I just got another challenge. I'm going to see if I can do this. And then you work on that and you surpass the expectations of the person that gave it to you. And then, ultimately you're discovered and you grow and things change. And then you're exposed to more experiences, more life lessons, more failures, because that's a huge part of your life is to fail and then get up and fix it and do it again until you get it right. It's when you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's not going to work, right? Like if you make a
that's right.
mistake and then you go back tomorrow, that was a big thing with kids. Like if anybody has children, it's just like, if you're going to do the same thing, if every time you have a test, you're not going to study, you're not going to pass. That's how it works, right? So you have to keep changing, and you have to keep doing something different and revamping your programming to cause you to continue to learn and grow and take on new things, right? You
Yeah.
can't stay in the same place and do the same thing all the time and expect extraordinary results. It's very
Absolutely.
basic, right?
Yeah, it's important, if you want different outcomes, you have to change your actions. So that's the most important aspect of it.
For
Um,
sure.
awesome. So I want you to take us back to your days of working for the government, and two-part question here is, when did you realize that you wanted to get into a leadership role? And at what point did you realize that you're a leader?
I would actually, honestly, I would say it was during my time in the government, but in many jobs, like in my experience work-wise, I've been a recruiter and a
Okay.
trainer. So a little bit of kind of coaching in those days. It probably wasn't such a big thing. So coaching wasn't as it is today. So
Yes.
I think it was labeled as training a lot more. But I remember doing like a major training program for the government and traveling around and training groups. It was called Train the Trainer, and you would train groups of people to
Yeah.
do this training, right? So, and I really enjoyed that, and I liked it, and and I saw where people had difficulties in understanding those types of concepts and things, and whether and how people would let themselves, like the negativity of their belief, their personal belief, stop them from achieving the goals that they wanted to achieve. And then when I really saw it was working in the government, because it's such and nothing, this is going to sound somewhat negative, but government is pretty toxic, right? Like I remember one of the first big realizations I had was, wow, I'm working in the government. This is great. And I'm going to be a policy person for a cabinet minister. This is amazing, right? Like you're actually going to be in a place where they're actually changing things and making things happen and making bills and doing stuff for people. Right? And then you realize, like, wow, this is like the worst, most toxic environment I've ever been in my life, because they're making all these rules and regulations for people, but they're not following them, right? And it's such a negative, fixed mindset environment, right? One of the biggest things I noticed was, like, in a minister's office, you have people who are political, generally, political science individuals that, probably have very little experience in doing what they're doing, right? I was fortunate enough that, I come from a background previously, so I wasn't completely green on issues, and I had a lot of real life experience, most of which people in the government, like, in that area, don't. And so what I realized initially was the environment of ministerial staff and their absolute disdain for bureaucracy, right? And I'm like, why would you have that attitude towards bureaucracy? Can't even say it. When they are actually the key and the function to the operation of any government that comes in, because without them, this world wouldn't exist. Like, seriously, there's some of the most intelligent people in the world in a bureaucracy, right? Like, those are the people that make the wheels turn. Those are the people,
That's
like,
right.
when a minister comes to you with some outrageous idea that they're going to do to make their mark, it's the people in behind the scenes that say, okay, that's incredibly impossible, right? But here is something you could do that would work, right? um so I never understood that attitude of ministerial staff feeling that way about, and I worked with somebody who was like just horrible about it. And that kind of became my mission. Like, I'm gonna fix that communication between the two, people, and the ministers have the same attitude, right? And I remember once working in one particular ministry of housing, and the minister there was a great guy, super guy, but fixed in his ways and things like that. And I said, and it was one of the worst performing ministries in the government at the time that I was there. Um, and I made a point of saying, like, we're going to turn this around. Like, we're going to change this. We're going to make it so that the people in our bureaucracy are going to want to work with you. And he's like, oh my God, that never happened. Right. But through doing simple things, like every Friday afternoon, I would go down to our department with the minister, and we would just hey, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Got any plans for the weekend? Like, just a regular chat. And people were stunned. Like, they're like, this has never happened before. Like, what's going on, right? And then you would just like, I had a really good relationship with them, and I was really proud of that. But it's all about developing relationships, because you
Yes,
cannot lead without a relationship, right? Like, you have to build those connections in order for you to achieve anything, right? So if you're immediately blocking that pathway to communication, you haven't got a prayer. Like, you're never going to get what you want, and people are never going to work or bend over backwards for you. I had no problem in that department getting people to help me do things that they had never done before, right? Like, they enjoyed it. They, if you value their experience and their understanding, it was easy to do.
that's right. And it's, what the ironic part, Kevin, is you look at the government and you immediately think leadership, leaders, because they're leading a country, a province, a city, whatever it may be. And it's ironic that there is very little leadership in the government, in terms of when, I've worked in the government as well. And it's very disappointing, to be honest with you. And do you ever see anything that will change that system, or change the leadership aspect of the government, or a government entity? Because there's a lot of complaints from younger folks now that have been experiencing the same thing over the years.
Mm.
I have friends that work for ministries and whatnot, and it's the same complaint, that the lack of leadership is very consistent across the board in government.
Yeah. And well, the thing is, there's lots of leaders in government. Like, to be
Mhm.
honest, like, it's difficult to generalize that everybody's the same, because
Correct.
there are really good people in there that want to do and make changes. Here's the problem, that, and you can't, this is not going to change, because this is just the way that the country, every country runs, is so a person who gets elected to office. So you get somebody, guy works in a garage, he's fixing cars, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then he's listening to people complain about these things that are happening to them. And then he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is stupid. Like, why are people struggling with this in their lives and everything else like that? And then they get this bug. I'm going to run for city alderman or councillor or whatever, right? So then you've got somebody, and quite often you skip all of those little small tier governments and you jump right into provincial or federal. And then the next thing you know, because your particular environment of where you ran was affected by, a very simple or basic issue that you actually got elected on in a landslide, you are now one of the most popular members of parliament in your party.
That's
So
right.
it's only natural that you would get a cabinet post. So now you have been, and again, I'm just giving you an example. It's not putting anybody down for any position that I have, because everybody's job is important and crucial. But you've got somebody who is a car mechanic and did a great job getting elected and everything, and then they put him in Ministry of Finance. What? Okay. And you're budgeting $560 billion a year. And your experience with budgeting is a $150,000 a year auto shop. Big difference, right? And you're also talking about schools and roads and construct. You can't walk into that job like so. So then that person goes through the course of changing, like, or going through the ministerial. So they had the bureaucracy people, like the deputy ministers and such, start the process of teaching this person. And when I say that, like, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, binders and binders and binders and binders and
Yes.
binders and binders of material, right? That they write for this week based on what they call purple paper, or used to call purple paper when I was in government, and the purple paper is the specific responsibilities of that minister designated from that leader to achieve in the term that they have of 4 years. Already impossible, right?
That's
But
right.
that's what you're dealing with. So that person is never going to have the opportunity to be a leader unless it's instilled in them to be a leader. But as a person, like a general guy coming in or woman coming in and doing the job, you don't have the ability to lead because you are swamped and overwhelmed by the incredible amount of information that's going to be pushed in your head that
That's
you've
right.
never had before, right? So you don't have an opportunity to lead, but your job is to hire people who can. So don't hire people that have that kind of negative attitude towards the people that can help you. Hire people that are willing to work. You want to look for people that are going to work and work together. You want to look for people who are somewhere on the level of leadership, right? The people that are going to help harness those people in the bureaucracy to work together to accomplish your goals. And to be honest enough to tell you that you can't do something. That's where you want that comfort level of those people. That like 99% of your issue right there, right? The
That's
communication thing. So you need people that can lead in that. You're not going to have time to lead as a minister because you don't have the say, to be honest with you, right? It's the leader of the party that you're in, and everybody knows from experience how that works. So you have to have people on board that can actually work their way through the leader's office to get your point to the person that's responsible, because it's
yeah,
not going to be the leader, it's going to be his chief of staff or somebody like that. So you want to weasel your way in there to get the information to the person. You want people like that. You want little leadership ferrets to go through the government and fix stuff. That's what you're looking for to do, right?
awesome. And that's a great segue to, the next part, which, as you alluded to, you've worked in the talent development and acquisition. So why are some organizations failing at developing their people, and should leadership training be mandatory in some organizations?
I think to answer the last question, any kind of training is always beneficial to an organization. So to be open to education and increase knowledge is never a losing scenario. So, every organization should be open to allowing their people to learn and grow, right? So as I'm sure you're aware, there's different levels of leadership. So there's, the leadership where you are assigned, you have a title of leader. So in that position, if you haven't selected a person that is actually a leader, that person's not going to do the job that you want them to do. What you want is somebody that's going to be able to grow and learn and develop and foster those relationships, somebody that's not afraid to encounter somebody that's smarter than them, that can do better than them, because those are the people that you want, right? You want to acquire the confidence of others, that to the point where when you have achieved your goals and responsibilities in one level and you move to the next level, you want those people to follow you,
Yes.
right? Like you want it's just like a continuous ladder of growing and developing and growing and developing. And it's your job. It doesn't matter if you're in the first segment of leadership as a manager or whatever, it's your job to make sure that the people who are working under you are learning, growing, and surpassing you, right? Like that's their goal. Like you want people that are not going to sit there and just do, that talk about you behind your back. You want people that say like, oh my God, I loved working with Kevin. Like he was like so, so forward, and he had great ideas. He let us express our thoughts. He came to us for advice. He admitted when he was wrong. He was able to look at the situation and help us, right? And he supported us, right or wrong, supported our decision in what we were doing. And we learned from our mistakes and we moved forward, and he was there beside you the whole way. That's what you want, right?
Absolutely. And the reason I bring that up is I think, people these days are thrown into leadership roles, and this is leading people at a very younger age and with less experience even. And not that, there's something wrong with that, but I think it kind of it tends to set some people up for failure, because if you're thrown in a group with 20, 30 people that you're managing, and you've never
Mhm.
managed people or led people before, and you haven't got an instruction manual to go with it, you haven't received any training, And at a lot of these organizations, your managers going to be pretty busy with their priorities and not have sufficient time to train you, coach you, mentor you, etc. This is why I think it's very important where training prior to putting somebody in leadership, at least teaching them the fundamentals, is very crucial to their development and of them succeeding.
I agree, and I think I don't think that's always an opportunity to, though. That's the
Yes.
problem, right? That's why you see these difficulties. I think, it's also part of the responsibility of the person who gets that job to make sure that they're aware of the procedures and stuff. But that being said, if you are thrown into a position like that and you don't have the support of your organization, one of the best ways to go about making that a more successful challenge for you is that when you get into it, don't go in there and piss all over everybody's cornflakes. Go in there and spend the first month like talking to people, and not
Yes.
only as a group but individually, and finding out, like, what is it that you hope to accomplish here? Like, what are some of the procedures that you guys have been in? This is kind of what I'm thinking. Like, do you think I'm on the right track? Like, do you think that's the way I should be going? Do you think I would get the support of everybody on the team if I chose to do something like that? Like, you have to take the initiative. Most often, people that are put in those positions have some sense of a skill set of leadership. That's why they got put there. But again, there are those mistakes that are made that somebody just needs to fill the position or whatever, right? So it is the onus is upon the person to go about it the right way and make sure that they don't go in roughshod and just jump all over everybody and like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because you will
That's right.
lose an entire team, right? So what you want to, like, you want collaboration. You want to say, like, what, I'm really glad that you're on my team. Like, I could really use somebody like you, and I'm thankful for that. And if you make a point of doing that on a regular basis, your collaboration will grow, and it's always going to be there, and people are going to work for you, and they're going to want to work for you because they know that you are there for them, got their back. That's the big thing, right? Is like, if you put it that way and you think like, these are my guys and I got their back, right? Like, I got their back. As a leader, that's your job. You got their back. You give them what they need to perform the job that they have to perform, and you support them. And when something happens and you fail, you learn from both the failures and the successes. Like, you have a decision-making process that everybody uses as a guideline. And then when it's done, maybe you have to change a few strategies. Maybe you have to change a few things, and you go ahead and you do that. But you move forward and you grow and you learn every single time. Good things, because there's tons of stuff to learn from success, and there's tons of stuff to learn from failure, right?
No, you're absolutely right, Kevin. And you brought up an interesting point that you don't always have the time, to go through that training or whatnot, because certain times you're just thrown into the role without any time. One of the issues I've seen with that in organizations is the lack of succession planning. So again, you're a leader. An opportunity comes for you to take on this higher role as a director, VP, etc. And you're quick to make that decision to say, okay, I want that position, and you're jumping. But who have you really developed as a leader, and what is your succession plan to secure your spot, so when you're leaving, your organization isn't struggling to find somebody as a replacement? And what happens sometimes is when you leave a big gap, it creates a lot of chaos within that group, right?
For sure. That's why it's important to make sure that everybody in your team is capable of doing that, right?
Yes.
Like, that's the way to solve it. That everybody is on equal footing, and you won't have to tell your superiors who to hire. They will know. And if you've done your job as a leader at that level before moving up, all of those people should be qualified in one way or another to take that job on. Nobody's going to be perfect. Nobody's going to have all the answers.
Right.
But every one of those people, they should be confident to pull anyone. They shouldn't have to go anywhere else to find the person that they want to
Correct.
replace you, right? They should be able to pick from the 5 or 10 people that are there, to the point where it should be difficult for them to find to
Yes.
decide because they're all so good, right? Like that's what you want to do. That's how you have to think. That's like you have to have that progressive thinking that is persistently your goal is to ensure that everybody on your team is capable of carrying this if you drop dead or get hit by a bus, right?
Yes.
Like that's the thing. That's what you want. You and if you find another opportunity in another country, in another company, somewhere, you should be able to go and feel comfortable that somebody in your
That's right.
team is capable of doing just as good of a job as you did. That's the idea.
Absolutely. That's definitely that's the way you want to do it. Um, so the next part I want to talk about is the importance of empowering individuals. How important is as a leader is it to empower your people, and why is it that some leaders struggle with empowering their team or certain employees on their team?
Okay, so that kind of takes us back to the one of the first questions was, you know, where you should not be afraid to empower people who are better than you, that can do a better job than you. That's what it's about, right? So to if you don't have um, like you have to be able to talk to people and tell them where they're falling short and where there's difficulties or where you're having challenges. But you have to be able to do that without them feeling like you're just telling them they're not up to par or they're not capable of doing it, right? You have to have that sense of communication, but you also have to be able to um, show them, like allow them to make mistakes, allow them to come to you. And then the biggest mistake I've seen in leaders, in anyone, when we're talking about leaders, like you're talking about CEOs, you're talking about people that you know are responsible for people. You got a team, they're doing a job, um, something happens, they've got their mandate and they know what they're supposed to be doing, but something's gone off the rails or something happened and a mistake's been made, and they take it to you as a leader and say, this is our issue. Like, what do we do now, right? So instead of just taking the most people, like most leaders, will just go like, "Ugh," and do it and change it and make it what they want, right? So by doing that, you have just told your entire team that they're not capable of making a decision without
Yes.
coming to you first, right? So you don't want that. You want to, okay, so why do you guys think this happened? Like, let's backtrack and see what happened. Like, where did we find this? Where did it go off the rails? Like, and what lack of communication caused that to happen, what lack of information, whatever the case is. Like, let's go back, and it's a learning moment, right? It's an opportunity to teach your team how to dissect something that went wrong and figure it out and fix it, right? Like, you don't want to make that decision. You want them to keep control of that. Empower them by allowing them to say, oh my God, yes, this is what it is. And now we can fix it. This is how we can fix it. This is what you're going to do, right? And then bring that back to them and say, this is what we've decided we're going to do. Okay, great. Your
That's
decision, right? Like, don't take that power away from them because they made a mistake. Like, everybody makes mistakes. And, sometimes mistakes cost a lot of money. Like, you just have to look at large corporations for that, like Coke, right?
yeah.
So stuff happens, right? But you can't like bury everybody that was on the team. You have to
No,
allow them to learn from that. And that's key. Like, that's the biggest key. And not fearing somebody who's going to be better than you at some point,
that's
because
right.
it's going to happen.
Exactly. And as a leader, when mistakes do happen, it is your responsibility and accountability to put up your hand for the team, because you're accountable for your team at the end of the day, and never throw any of your teammates under the bus. And I've seen that happen as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Right. That's a perfect example of how somebody who possibly a level 1 or 2 leader is not going to go to level 3, right? Like, they're not going to make it because you can't do that. Like,
Yes.
you can't walk away from your team at a time when you need them most, right?
That's right.
Like, how is that person going to recover after doing that? How are they going to go back to that person and ever gain their trust
Yes.
again?
Trust.
Like, never, right? Never going to happen. So
That's right. And that's one of the most important things in leadership, is to build trust with your team. And if you can't do that, if your team cannot trust you, it's going to be a very, very tough road,
Yeah.
being a leader anywhere. So
Building trust allows you to go back to team members and talk to them about the difficulties that they have, talk to them about the failures, talk to them about what they messed up. Having that trust, they trust you to be honest enough with them to tell them where they fell short without throwing them under the bus or
yes,
without reprimanding them, and not do it in front of others, right? Like they know that you're going to handle that the right way, so they trust you and they will work with you, right?
that's right.
That's the key. That's the biggest thing that you can learn from that.
Absolutely. So before I get into your coaching side of the business, Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
I should have asked you this question at the beginning as well. Is what is your unconventional definition of leadership?
My unconventional definition of leadership is, what is it? I would say it's allowing people to grow and develop for the common good of whatever the project is that you're doing or whatever the company is that you're. It's empowering people to be who they are and use their capabilities to the best that they can. Right? That's what it's about for me. Empowering people and helping people, because as a leader, that's your job to develop. You're developing people.
That's right.
It's, like you're not developing the company. You're working for the company's goals, but you're developing the people that do that. That's your job. They're like your children. Like, so you foster them and you teach them and, watch them grow and flourish and be happy and let them go. Right?
Yes.
Like you're there to protect them, to help them, so that, that's, for me, that's what it's about.
That's right. And it's funny you bring that up about them being your kids, because I also say that leadership is a transferable skill that you use in relationships, in your marriage, in your parenting,
Right.
in your family, in life in general, right? So
Yeah.
it helps you with every aspect.
Absolutely, for sure. Like, I mean, anybody can tell you that. Like, if you, especially you realize that more so in coaching, I think, that, every certain skills you develop go across the board of your life. Like, it doesn't matter, it's work, personal, business, relationships,
That's right.
whatever it is. Like, that's what your ability to learn how to use those for all of those aspects. Like, you can be a leader at work, but you're also a leader in your neighborhood or your family or your friends and stuff like that, right? So it's all the same thing. It's not just at work.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Awesome. So now getting into your coaching side, one of the questions I had for you is, now that you've got years of experience with the coaching, what has been the main theme that people come to you with? Is it, the limited beliefs? Is it insecurity? Is it fear? What have you seen as a trend that kind of sits with people and has kind of initiated them to take that
Right.
step?
I think most people that I've encountered, there's probably, I think, maybe 5 things. One is a limiting belief of some sort, right? Where they don't feel that they can do what they want to do. Shiny object syndrome, right?
Yes.
So they try to do too many things. They can probably do all of those things, but maybe not all at once, which is generally what people try to do. Communication skills, right? Being able to talk to other people and understand that whole concept of how to do that. Active listening, they don't hear what's being said. They don't listen to people. Like, when you're talking to somebody and you're thinking about what you have to do next, that's not listening. You have to listen to the person, right? And time management, huge, right? So I think those are my mainstays the first common issues I have, like time management for sure. Always, just people, especially small business people, doing too much of what they shouldn't be doing, not knowing what to let go of and
Yes.
arm out to someone else, right? there's a couple of guys that I follow on Instagram, and their big thing is like fire yourself from the jobs you shouldn't be doing, right? And that's very true, because you got people doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. If you're trying to build your business, you don't have time to be doing some of those things, right?
That's
There goes my earbud, but I think it's still working. Okay, so I don't need that. But yeah, it's like that's the whole thing, is that people have a lack of belief in themselves and a lack of their abilities, and they feel like, I can't do that, I don't deserve that, or nobody's going to listen to me, those types of things, right? Those are the biggest blocks that people face, right?
Yes.
Is that belief that they can do something, or they just hold on to their past and they let their past define them, which is wrong, because you can't change your past, but you don't have to live your past, right? You live in the present, you live now, and you can't live in the future either, right? So you have to live now, and it's in this now, and being present in the moment is what avails you all the opportunities that are available to you, because you're there and you're actively participating in the present moment. So you see those things come to you, and you allow those things to come into you, and then you're good, right? That's
right.
what it's all about.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. So if I were to ask you, Kevin, there's a lot of coaches out there, as
Mm-hmm.
we're both aware of. What makes you different or unique when clients are looking for coaching? What would you say Kevin Raymond is, what's his niche or specialty, or why should they pick Kevin over your next competitors?
I think I would have to say, just in my experience that I've had so far, and I've coached a lot of people that have had coaches in the past, so I base it on that kind of thing. So I developed my program. I have 3 main programs: a 3, 6, and 12-month program. They're all different levels. They cover the same principles, but whoever signs up for whatever program can be assured that that program is geared specifically to them. And it's not a cookie cutter program. I spend the time to find out what they are all about, what they need, and the goals that they have, and then we come up with a plan on how to achieve those things. And I also do an extensive amount of follow-up afterwards, which I don't think is as common with some coaches, but I spend a lot of time always, touching base, how are you doing? What's going on? Where are things at? That type of thing, right? I think that's very important. And I also, I don't constantly sell to my clients. My time with my clients is spent helping them. Yes. And then when the program is done, if they choose to continue, of course, that's wonderful, more than happy. But what I'm hoping happens is that they like, this is great, this has been very helpful, and they go off and they do their thing and learn more and do more, and then at some point come back to me with a different issue, right? Which is more encouraging for me than, like, I want to see what they can do with what we've done, right? So give them the opportunity to soar, and then come back with something new and something different, a bigger challenge, right? So for me, that's what it's about.
It's like setting your kids free at some point, and then they come back to you again. Right?
Yeah, then they're living in your basement.
Yeah. All right. So Kevin, how do you measure success with your clients?
It's pretty simple. If they've achieved the goals that we've set out to achieve, right? Like if your client is either where they want it to be or more, I think that is successful, right? If they've accomplished what they need to accomplish and have the ability to thank you for it and be thankful for it and say the biggest compliment you could give, or the best way to know that you've done a good job, is the referral you get from them. That's the best way, right? So when somebody refers somebody to you after you've coached them, you've done your job, right? If you never hear from them again, then no.
Absolutely.
So, that's it. I think, the biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand is the strength of referrals and asking for referrals and things like that, right? I think it's very important in being successful as a coach.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. I wanted to thank you again, Kevin, for spending your time and talking to us about and sharing your experiences and knowledge. It's greatly appreciated. One thing I want to talk about before I wrap up is I anticipate getting this question, and I know you and I talked about it. Why would I want to have somebody on my podcast that's in the same kind of world as I'm in, and why I wouldn't view that as competition. So one thing I want to speak to that is I always believe in collaboration and kindness and helping each other. There's, like you and I talked about, there's 8 billion people in the world. It's not like, we're in this little corner and we're kind of taking each other's clients away. I think if we kind of lead by example as leaders again, and show people that it's okay to collaborate with people that are in the same industry as you are, you just help each other grow more. And
exactly.
You foster that community of the spreading the kindness and sharing the wealth kind of thing. So again, I greatly appreciate you taking up my offer. It's been great talking to you as we met over social media, and we've you kind of supporting me on my side and liking my stories and my content. I greatly appreciate that about you, Kevin, and that makes you a true leader in my eyes.
Well, thank you very much. But it's also about the simple fact that we can't all work with everyone, right? And I'm sure you, as everyone else, sometimes you're not the right fit for a person, right? Like that's why there's so many people, is because you can't be the person for everyone. Like you can't have everything that somebody needs, whether it's just your demeanor or how you handle things or your knowledge. Like everybody has a different level of knowledge, and everybody has a different skill set. Everybody has a different way of presenting themselves and doing other things. And those are the things that make people make the decisions that they want to make, right? So like you're not going to, I'm sure you've turned down clients in the past, like I have. You just know that, I'm not what they need. And if you can be honest about that, I've had referrals from people I've not worked with. So, they appreciate the honesty about it, because you can't work with everyone. You're not the perfect person for everyone. And it's, and that's why collaborations like this are good, because it gives everybody an opportunity to see that and to understand that. Right. And understand that it's not an issue.
Exactly. Awesome. So Kevin, why don't you tell people how they can find you and how can they get a hold of you?
So the easiest way, you can get all of my information on my website, which is kevtalk.net. My email is kevin@kevtalk.net. And my coaching, like the Instagram and YouTube, it's all Kevin Raymond Coaching with an underscore between each word. It's pretty simple. I try to keep it as simple as possible.
Awesome. So again, thank you again. And I greatly appreciate you for being here today and spending your time with RK Leadership. And to any of the folks out there that have any specific questions or comments, please, you know how to find Kevin, or you can reach out to me and I'll direct your questions to Kevin. And thank you very much for spending time with us today, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.